Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. Just thought I'd take a ride out into the woods and do a video today, or at least the narrating part of maybe one that I already took the video of. I don't know how I'm going to put it together, but I'm going to try to do something. Try to do something video-wise every day so that I get a whole lot of videos up there. I want to get more involved in it. I used to ride this road that you see we're on right now on a bicycle when I was 11 years old. I would ride it from my home out through the country here. This is called the Beckham Road, named after a family that had a farm right there to the left. I come around to the right, but if we would have went left that first opportunity back there, we would have gone out to the Beckham farm. But I used to ride this, it's about a 4-mile ride to Carmichael's, where my grandparents lived at. And it didn't have gravel on it like this. It had what we called red dog. There's coal mines all over the place around here, and they had slate dumps, big piles of rock and debris that came out of the mining process, along with the coal that wasn't any good for any use, so they would have to store it. And they would catch on fire because of the little bit of residual coal in there, and they would just smolder for decades. And the process of it burning and smoldering like that would cause the rock itself to turn red, and it would have a reddish cast to it even when it cooled off, when it was cold. And they used to pave the roads with it, and it worked better than this. Gravel, it's like paving a road with marbles. You know what I mean? It shakes you and bounces you around. And I would go this way once in a while, and I go that way once in a while. It took me to two different areas of Carmichael's though. And riding a bicycle was a beautiful experience along these country roads. I went to a school, elementary school, that's called Sugar Grove Elementary. And I came from a town in Fayette County where I was born, Masontown, and I was used to town sidewalks and town parks and all kind of town restaurants and 4 or 5 grocery stores and everything. We moved over here, it was a little bit of a culture shock to Greene County, because Greene County is like nothing but one big woods, and I like that now that I grew up. And I remember coming down here, riding a bicycle down here one day, and I had a strange experience. To the left here, there is what looks like what's left over of an old stone quarry. There used to be a lot of stone quarries around here too. They used to build houses and milk houses and spring houses and all that out of stone. They had a lot of use for stone. And it's right here to the left. I'll show you. I'm going to stop the vehicle and get out of it here if I can get off the road safe enough. All right. As you can see, the stone quarry right here. you can imagine, it looked like what you might call a witch's coven or some kind of a satanic meeting here one time. As I came down around that bend, I looked, there was all kind of hieroglyphic-like writings in white chalk all around the stone. And there was, they used this like an amphitheater. They had seating over there on, I forget exactly what they were. I think they were wooden things they brought and took back with them. And they had a fire in here, had a lectern sitting here where someone stood at as they talked. And found one other place that this occurred, out in the woods about 4 or 5 miles from here. Some group had some kind of a satanic religious cult of some kind, I guess it was. But another time I come down through here, it was in the month of May, riding a bicycle, and right over here, where that wet area looks like it's wet right there in the rock, it was full of icicles in May. It was just right there where that dark collar is. I couldn't believe it because it was kind of a warm morning and I was sweating from pedaling the bicycle. But sure enough, big icicles hanging there. So I'm gonna get back on the road now. I know this is now private property, and yeah, I don't want to, you know, get on private property if I can help it. Well, here we go. On the road again. Just can't wait to get on the road again. All right. "84 degrees here, Pennsylvania, right now. We've had a pretty warm summer this summer so far. See that bank on the left side going up around this curve? Mottled here with sunlight and shade and sunlight and shade. Well, on this bank every year in April, there's red flowers that grow here, and I've coined a name for them. I call them Vivian flowers, because in the end of each petal on the blossom, there is a V cut in it. Of course, some of you might know that Vivian is the name of my wife. She is something else, a Really appreciate her as a partner in life. But I come out here every spring to see if they're blooming, and they were this year. They have a special need. They won't grow in the woods. You won't find them way back in the deep woods like where you're hunting ginseng. And they don't grow in a field. They grow in the transitional area between an open area and the woods. I'd say a strip about maybe 30 feet wide before you get into the woods. And that's one place right there where they grow. I just thought I would show it to you while we were passing it. We are on a road now that's called Turkey Knob Road, because this is Turkey Knob Hill. And it's one of the highest points around here. And I've taken my four-wheel drive before over to the left here and come up through on the other side of the trees right there, and then you come out into a field and can go even higher to get to the very peak of Turkey Knob. Down to the right down there, my son and I, Brian, was out on the next ridge over hunting ginseng, and you've got a ridge coming up here that goes over that way and turns to transition you to the ridge we wanted on. We hunted ginseng. Coming back, instead of turning, it was starting to get dark, but instead of following the transitional ridge back over to here, we went straight a little ways as we were talking, and that ridge started taking us down to a whole different part of the woods. And I said, wait a minute, I realized we should have turned back here and followed the peak of the ridge over this way, but now we're going to have to go down into a valley and make a shortcut to cut it off at the pass, so to speak, to get back on the right ridge. And down there in the dark, somehow, coming up through there, I banged my forearm against a honey locust tree and ran one of those honey locust thorns way back into my forearm. And I did feel like a little pinch, but we were trying to make it to the car while we could still at least see a little bit. We didn't have a light of any kind. And we didn't have a light of any kind. And sorry, the car just popped out of nowhere there. Something was tickling and itching on my arm, and I kept scratching it. When we got up to where the truck was, here my arm was covered with blood. It had been seeping out of my forearm and running down, dripping off my hand. I didn't even realize it. But honey locusts, you don't see a whole lot of them. They have those 4, 5, even 6-inch long thorns on them that they come on the tree kind of green. They are green when they come on the tree, but they die and they turn to real stiff, sharp wood thorns. And I mean, they will run back in your arm easily. That's what I did. Bumped it in the dark when I couldn't see. So I'm going to try to, I believe, instead of going anywhere for a big long ride, I'm just going to work my way back home and walk down into my office in the woods, right there at the end of the driveway. Got a place where I can make videos and have conversations just as easy as anywhere else. A nice little wood, so that's where I'm heading now. Yeah, the times really have changed. I mentioned earlier that I was about 11 years old when we moved over here from Masontown, and it was kind of like a culture shock coming to the countryside like this after living in that. It was a small town, but nevertheless it had sidewalks and parks and all kind of stuff that we didn't have over here. But I love the country so much that I'm glad we moved over here. But to give you an idea of the difference between a regular school, I was in first, second, third, and halfway through fourth grade over there, right in town. Over here, the Sugar Grove school that I transferred to was an elementary school that had 2 grades in each room. And let's see, I finished out 4th grade here, 5th grade, and then halfway through 6th grade, and we moved on further into Carmichael's. But while I was here, here's some of the experiences that sounds like it's from like really long ago. Earl Headley was the principal teacher of the school, and he taught 5th and 6th grade. And he used to have us to memorize poems. And we went back into the back of the room, maybe 2 or 3 of us at a time, and went into what he called the cloak room. And it was just a giant walk-in closet. It had 2 doors on each end of the room. You go in one way, you could hang your coat up and come out the other door if you wanted to. But we went back there to recite our poems. And you know, I've learned to really love poems. I used to think it was a sissy undertaking then. I didn't like it. But as time went on, you know, that thing is, I'm 78 years old right now, and it's stuck with me to this day. I think Longfellow was a poet who wrote the one, "Blessings on the little man, the barefoot boy, with cheek of tan." Yeah, barefoot. Blessings on the little man, a barefoot boy with cheeks of tan. With thy turned up pantaloons and thy merry whistled tunes, with the red lips, redder still, kissed by strawberries on the hill. It just defined what the life of a country boy was. Yeah, and I could identify with that. The picking the strawberries and the raspberries and wild berries like that. It was at that time that people made homemade pies a lot more than they do now. And my mother and dad ended up having an orchard. And we had plum trees, apple trees, made apple pie, made apple cider in the fall. It was beautiful over here in Greene County. But I can remember going to that school. It had 2 classes, or 2 levels of class, 1st and 2nd grade in one room, 3rd and 4th in another, and 5th and 6th in another. And would you believe it? In that brick building, we had a cafeteria. I never had a cafeteria before. And it was good food. It was cooked by Mrs. Hart. And Mr. Hart was the janitor. Kept the place warm in the wintertime and fixed everything, maintained it. It was such a good experience meeting these country folk over here and learning about Henry David Thoreau and Longfellow and Whittier and all those poets, like Maud Muller. That's a beautiful poem by Maud, I think it's Whittier. Yeah, John Greenleaf Whittier. We're coming down to the road where I'm going to have to cross it now. It's a 4-way intersection. I'm going to go straight across and go up and park this vehicle in the edge of. There's a couple of doves. There they go. I'm going to park this up near our driveway and walk into the woods there to finish having a talk. It's odd that I would end up back over here in this place, because I had mentioned earlier about living up the road there, just about a half a mile, Sugar Grove, and riding my bicycle to my grandparents' house through the country on the roads we just came back from. Now, there was a time that we moved to Carmichael's. Probably was about 13 then. Yeah, about 13, 12, 13. And we moved away from the country back to the outskirts, actually a residential area of Carmichael's, which was almost the size of Masontown. So I was back in town again. But my uncle, Frank Arford, and my cousin, Tink, actually we called him Tink, but his first name was Donald. His last name was Heiss, H-I-C-E. The three of us did a terrible lot of camping, staying for sometimes maybe a week at a time, out in all the local wooded areas around us. We would gather up dead limbs that fell in the daytime. You know, that they didn't fall in the daytime. I mean, we gathered them up in the daytime, not cutting down any trees at all, but just using the dead wood that had fallen to light a fire at night, so we could stay up and play guitar and sing. Frank was good at playing the guitar, really good, and he had a good voice, and he sang country songs. We all learned them sitting around the fire. In the daytime, sometimes we would hunt like groundhog or something to have, or our parents just always stuffed the duffel bag full of canned food and stuff, so we had it good out there whether we knew it or not at the time. It was such a good thing for a young person growing up to live in the woods and come really acquainted with the woods. It's where you washed, where you got clean. You would swim in the creek to get clean. We learned how to make a spring. Any place that we went in Greene County, you could make a spring. All you had to do is find a wet spot where the water was trying to work its way out of the ground on a bank or a hill, and you could develop a spring and be drinking water within a half an hour. Crystal clear, good water. So one time, Frank said, how would you guys like to go to a place and stay for a while that had a big lake in it and had an island in the middle of the lake about the size of the business district of Carmichael's? He said, it's not that far from here, but I never took you there. I don't think you've ever been there, and I haven't been there for 10 years, he said. 10 years off of him would have put him, let's see, at that time when he was talking about that, he was probably 17 or so years old. Hell, he was really young then, first time he found out about it. But anyway, through life, he and several of the boys from Carmichael's came out and built a raft by tying pieces of electric poles that they had taken down and cut up, and they were, like 8 feet long, and they had them just laying there. Now, this was United States Steel property at the time. And I said, where's it at? He said, it's over by Sugar Grove. I said, well, we just moved from there. I didn't see it. He said, well, it was back behind your house toward the river, about a half a mile. So, I can see why you never saw it. He said, we call it the Black Lagoon. And I thought, oh, wow, that sounded like one of those spook movies that used to be on Chiller Theater on TV. The Black Lagoon. I remember the creature from the Black Lagoon. Anyway, it brought all these ideas and visions up in my mind. I said, is it really black? What's black about it? He said, the water looks black until you pick it up, and then it's crystal clear. He said, what it is the whole lake is the perimeter of it happens to be right level with a seam of coal. And they dug, I don't know what they did digging that lake out there, but the mines produce a lot of water. They had to have a place to store it or something, but it's a big lake, and it looks like it's black water, but it's not. When you pick it up, it's crystal clear. And he said, there must be nice fish in there. It's been there for a long time. He said, because there's bobbers and monofilament line hanging in the trees. He said it's a big lake, and then one side of it is fed from a waterfall where the water comes out. It's good water right out of the hill, and the waterfall is about 30 feet high, and it cascades down over the waterfall, and then this gully, it's like a ravine that goes out around for about 300 yards like that, and then just opens up into the lake. He said that is what we call the lagoon. He says that water backs up in there, so that ravine must be 30 feet wide. He says, and the water comes up around that curve up here to a sandbar. That's a perfect place to go camping. We could just set our stuff up right there on that sandbar, and we could fish. And the left rim of that, going around that, there was a ridge to our back. We put our tent right here, and you could only go just a few feet, and it's like an escarpment. Trees growing all over it, so it was in the woods. And when you get to the top, it was only like 5 feet wide across the top, and then straight back down to the lake on that side. And Frank was getting the camp ready, starting to make supper. We had helped him get it mostly done. And Tink and I decided to go up over that, go across that, and see what was on the other side. We didn't know that it was a lake right there until we went up there to find out. But anyway, you'd never believe it. There was that raft. A raft that Frank had made many years before, or helped make with other boys, was down there bobbing through these trees that were sticking up out of the water. They had all died, these trees, but they were sticking up out of the water, and the raft was right there floating among them. So Tink and I, we had to hold on to roots to get up the one side and reverse it on the other side. It was so steep you couldn't walk down it. So we held on to the roots, got our way down, and got right near the raft as close as we could, and then jumped to it one at a time. And when you hit that raft, it wobbled like this, and water splashed up on it. And there was a tree, like a sapling, probably 2.5, 3 inches in diameter, that you could get a hold of like that once you got on the raft. So we both made it. We both got onto the raft, and we broke off another one, a lot smaller. It was very long, very thin. We used it to try to touch bottom, and just 4 feet out from where the water was coming up against the bank right there, 4 feet out, was halfway across the raft. We couldn't touch bottom. And that sapling that we had there was 20 feet long. It was long, and we still couldn't touch the bottom, just 4 feet out. So we knew, you know, we already had learned how to swim years ago, but we didn't tempt fate and mess around. We made sure we were safe, and we called it the Black Lagoon. Well, the reason I told you that was to tell you this. Another time we came there, it was during spring break, and I was still in grade school. We came out during spring break, but actually what it was during the Easter holiday. They call it spring break. And we had gone down to the same sandbar where we had stayed before, recognized a familiar territory, built a fire. We had rolled down a log that we were so fortunate to find on the bank where there was no trees in front of it to impede it from rolling down to the sandbar. And it must have been 2.5, 3 feet in diameter. It was a very old tree, like what you call a snag, that had fallen over, and we rolled it down and out onto that sandbar that was surrounded on 3 sides by water, and we caught it on fire underneath and got it to burn, and it was burning really nice. But you could look at the log and see the whole thing wasn't on fire. It was just underneath it, glowing orange and light orange where it had been burning, and it had been burning for hours. And finally the sun started going down, and we had supper there. We had made something, I can't remember what it was. And then we went into the tent when it started raining. And we could just sit inside the tent, but it was kind of late by that time, and we got sleepy, so we just fell asleep. Woke up in the morning about 9 o'clock, sleeping like a log, all 3 of us in that tent. in the water. The tent had gotten saturated and started dripping through. Our blankets got wet. We were wet. It was still raining. It was like a monsoon. It would get anything wet, inside and out. We were like sleeping in the water. And when I got up, whoa, it's cold. It's cold. The cold front must have moved in or something. So I laid back down and covered back up again with a wet blanket. And then I got to thinking, wait a minute, I don't want to lay here in a wet blanket. And Frank said, what are you doing, Kenny? I said, hey, Frank, everything is soaked. Huh? What's that? He sat up and went, oh, man, look at here, look at this. I said, there's nothing warm around here, and I'm shivering. I said, I lost all my body heat. I'm going outside. I'm going to go over where the log is. And you know, underneath it was still burning. And the only warm place for miles was if you straddled that log or on one side of it and leaned over and let the heat come up to you. That's the only way you could escape from being too cold and wet. Now, it was still drizzling, just a little bit, but it was raining on me. My hair was soaked. Tink popped out. He said, what's going on out here? He says, is this still raining? Yeah, it's still raining, and the tent and everything is soaked. So time found all three of us standing over top of that log and trying to get a little warmth from something. And we did, as long as we stayed there. And Tink looked up at Frank and said, you know what, Frank? Now, Frank was 3 years older than Tink. And Tink was 3 years older than me. So we had 3 years between us. He said, you know what, Frank? He said, I don't think it could get any worse than this. Look at this. He said, this is sick. He said, it don't even act like it wants to slow up, and we're already soaked. What's we going to do tonight? And Frank stand there thinking, and Tink said, I'll tell you what, this is about as bad as it gets. I don't think it get any worse than this. And just then, Frank looked up at him and a snowflake landed on his nose. And I saw it, and I went, whoa, what's that? I looked up, and what had been sprinkling rain turned to snow flurries drifting down on us as the day was working its way into the afternoon. Frank got to thinking. He said, hey, okay, guys, hey, this is what we're going to do. And I said, what is it? What are we going to do? He said, well, look here. He coined a word called what you call. He used to say all the time, huh, you kidding? What you call, we're going to get out of here. I said, oh, I know. That's what we had that day ahead of us. The rest of maybe 2 hours before it started, the sun going down again. We had to gather up all of the stuff, put it in army duffel bags that we had. Soaking wet, it was heavier going out of the woods than it was coming in. And we had to walk in the rain. Exerting our bodies warmed us up. We didn't worry about once we got started. We walked out of those woods. It took us a long time. We walked and walked and walked. We climbed up around the side of the waterfall to get to the top, throwing a bag up in front of you, and then crawl up to it about 2 feet and throw it again till we got up to the top. And then they had these big scrapers that used to haul the slate from the preparation plant up there and then go out and just spread it. And these things run all the time, and we couldn't let anybody see us because we wasn't supposed to be in there. So we had to dodge those guys when we could hear, we called it a carry-all, it's a scraper. When we heard it coming, we had to hide. And there was a great big thing. It looked like a black desert we had to run across one time while he was on the other end of his trip and before he got back. But we finally come down, guess where? Right through here behind me, where I'm sitting right now. This was a farm that we considered owned the property around that lake. So we stayed into the trees and the woods, worked our way down to the road you hear down there, the traffic going up and down Route 88. We got down and there was an escarpment of, a pretty really steep angle, almost a cliff, but it wasn't rock, it was dirt and trees, grass. It was about 30-foot escarpment that faced across Route 88 toward one big white farmhouse there. And the people that lived in it, their name was Kukushka. Some of the nicest people you'd ever want to meet. And Frank and Tink and me, our hair was plastered flat down, our shirts were soaked, our underwear was soaked, so was our shoes. And Frank said, look here. He says, here's what I'd like you guys to do. He said, I want you to go down the bank here, and when no car's coming, cross over there, and go up, knock on that door, that farmhouse, and whoever comes, ask them if you can use their telephone. Boy, that was in the days way before these things. Remember the phone booth? Do you know where any are working today? They're like a relic from the past. Anyway, we went down. We crossed the road, went up through the yard of the farmhouse and up the front steps onto the porch and knocked on a door. And a young girl opened the door up and said, hello. She said, can I help you? And then an older woman, the woman of the house, came walking down the steps just right inside the door and said, who is that out there, Paulette? Or I think she said that. And she said, there's some boys here. They look soaked, Mom. And she stepped out and said, let me see. And she said, what are you boys doing? I said, well, we was wanting to know if we could use your telephone. See, by that time we had moved from Sugar Grove. I was going to school at Nemacolin. We moved over at Carmichael's. So she saw what plight we were in. And she said, where are you coming from? Get in here. And I said, I can't come in. She said, why not? I said, I'm all soaked. She said, come, get in here. And reached out and pulled me and Tink both in, shut the door behind us, and said, go get these boys 2 bowls of hot chili. And I said, no, I'd like to use your telephone. She said, here, use it. And she handed me the old rotary dial, remember? And I called home, and I called my mom and dad, and I said, we're not going to be able to stay. It's raining so hard, we are soaked to the bone. We don't have anything dry with us. And we walked out of the woods, and we're at the Kukushka's house down on the south end of Sugar Grove. Could you come? She said, we'll be right there and get you boys. So they came in a 55 Chevy pickup truck for us to throw all of our stuff in and see if we could crowd into the one seat and get a 5-mile ride home. Well, that woman gave us that chili, and I never forgot that. It warmed me up from the inside out, and I felt bad because Frank didn't get any. But boy, he sure did get something to eat when he got to our house. And here I am. I'm on the farm that we were afraid to walk across because it was it was the land that was in periphery concerning the lake. It was, let's see, what would that be? The western shore of the lake is what this farm is. And here I am, back here again after all these years. It's hard to believe. I was afraid of the man that might come down the driveway and see us, and it's the same driveway I'm getting ready to drive up right now. Isn't that amazing how life is? You never know what's going to happen. Well, it's been real good talking with you this time, folks. You have a good evening, and we'll see you back here now. Bye.